Welcome to the second OrbEEt webinar on the intranet portal and in-office display and the gamification approach developed in the project. My name is Wilfrid Utz, I'm from BUC and I'm your moderator for today. And together with my colleague Stuart from Coventry University, we will walk you through this webinar and give you a demonstration of what has been accomplished in this session. Just a quick note on the agenda and the planned steps that we have organized for this next 30 minutes. We will give you a brief introduction to the rules of this webinar. Then we will focus a little bit on the project to give you a background, the background required in order to understand the demonstration and discussion of the gamification approach. And we will conclude at the end with the Q&A session. So in case you have any question, please feel free to ask and feedback to us. To give the whole thing a bit more substance and to see who is actually talking to you, I introduced myself already. I'm the one on the right. I'm the moderator for today, and Stuart will take over right after me to the content part. He will be our presenter today. For the webinar, you should see a screen like the left one on your screen already. There's two things to consider. Number one is that during the webinar, all your microphones are automatically muted, so you cannot talk directly to us. So in case you have any question, please feel free to use the chat window that you see here marked in red to type your questions, and at the end we will follow up on these questions either directly in the webinar or offline afterwards via email. Another thing is that we will actually record the webinar, so to give also other participants the possibility to view this webinar results at the end on demand through a video stream. This is actually the first step already concluded, the introduction to the webinar, and I will now hand over to Stuart to walk you through the results that have been accomplished in the context of the project. Stuart, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction, Wilfrid. My name is Stuart, and I am from Coventry University. COVUNI is a technical partner on the OrbEEt project with a focus on gamification, behavioral feedback, and platform validation. Today, as part of this continuing webinar series, I will be presenting the gamified ecosystem, which is the end product of the gamification engine within the OrbEEt framework. Before we get started on that, however, I will be giving you a brief outline of the OrbEEt project as a whole, just to highlight some overall goals and provide context for what I will be discussing today. Note, I will not be covering other aspects of the OrbEEt project in detail, as the focus for this webinar is on the gamification and interfaces primarily. So for further information on the different elements of the OrbEEt project, please view the other videos in this webinar series. The main objective of the OrbEEt project is to reduce energy consumption within an office setting through enabling positive behavioral change with respect to energy-saving behaviors. The goal of OrbEEt is to achieve this through energy and context data monitoring, providing this information in a relevant manner to occupants and engaging them through gamified elements and activities. One of the main innovations of the OrbEEt framework is the granularity of the energy data captured and the context data that is utilized. Indeed, through a network of sensors at each premise, energy data can be captured at device level, and furthermore, business processes are incorporated into the analysis as they are highly relevant to the occupants of these settings, and as the occupants are the ones who trigger the system and influence the data itself. By considering both real-time energy data from devices and business process analysis, we further process the overall data to provide relevant behavioral messages to end users and show them enhanced display energy certificates. This provides a more dynamic environment for the end users and a means of active participation whereby feedback relating to energy consumption performance is directly actionable and tailored to the occupants' various contexts. The scope of this webinar is to focus on the gamification, which, as can be seen here, takes the sensor data and the business process data and presents it in a way tailored to the specific context of the users. So at present, the OrbEEt project is in its third year and currently within the pilot validation testing phase. As part of the project history, we've completed the requirements analysis by identifying the needs of the end users and business, incorporating these requirements within the foundations of the project to ensure optimum viability within the environment itself. This was fed into the design and development of the OrbEEt tools, namely the specification of various layers and engines that would comprise the overall infrastructure. These components were put through development phases and integrated into the overall OrbEEt system that takes the real-time energy and contextual data to process and provide behavioral feedback through its main interfaces. Once the OrbEEt system was in its release version, it was deployed for testing and validation within the 4 OrbEEt pilots, which is the current stage of the project. The OrbEEt pilot sites are located within Austria, Germany, Bulgaria, and Spain. These sites include offices, museums, and municipality buildings within different geographical regions of Europe, each with its own weather conditions. This provides a range of settings, business processes, and context to allow for diverse testing and validation of the OrbEEt framework and a gauge of the applicability within different sites. As stated, this validation process is currently underway and ongoing. So that gives a brief summary of the OrbEEt project and its aim to utilize high granularity sensor and contextual data to facilitate positive behavioral change for saving energy. We are now moving on to the core of the webinar, namely a focus on the gamified ecosystem component of the OrbEEt system. So as has been highlighted within the OrbEEt framework, the gamified ecosystem is an endpoint, utilizing the energy KPIs and business processes from the other layers of the infrastructure to present tailored behavioral feedback to occupants. The ecosystem itself consists of 3 different interfaces targeting specific facets of stages relating to behavioral theory. As such, I will be covering these main topics. Firstly, I will discuss some of the behavioral theories that provide a foundation for achieving positive behavioral change, and which leads into the development of the OrbEEt Behavioral Change Framework, or OBCF for short, that takes those theories and encompasses them within the context of OrbEEt to inform interface development and the specifics of gamification. Once this foundation is laid, an overview of the ecosystem itself will be presented, showing how it fits into the OrbEEt framework and the communication processes with the other elements such as the CO engine and information management layer. This will lead into the crux of the system, namely the behavioral feedback, and why this is an innovative aspect and one that is powerful for positive behavioral change. As part of that, some examples of feedback will be highlighted and a discussion regarding the refinement and ranking of these as a validation component. Afterwards, each of these 3 interfaces, namely the in-office display, intranet portal, and smartphone game, will be presented, showcasing their design, features, and behavioral elements. Finally, a summary of this webinar's main points will be provided, and a question and answer segment will follow depending upon the remaining time. So let's begin. Issues relating to climate change are now more prominent than ever. Energy efficiency is an important aspect considering organizational and occupant levels in public buildings. Occupant behavior in particular plays a key role in the process of saving energy, with major areas of wastage being directly linked to the use of heating, lighting, and electric devices. While automating these devices can provide a partial and costly solution, the influence of personal preferences and comfort levels of productivity must also be considered. Strategies must thus seek to enhance organizational energy efficiency in the public sector by promoting positive behavioral changes amongst both occupants and visitors. However, such strategies must be informed by the knowledge of related behaviors, business processes, and best practices for saving energy within the specific workplace context. To encourage and support participation in adopting energy-conscious behaviors, the incorporation of serious games and gamification offers the potential to bring about positive behavioral change. So the OBCF itself is informed by behavioral theories and gamification mechanics that have shown to achieve and sustain long-lasting human behavioral change. The principal theories employed to design the OrbEEt include the trans-theoretical model, TTM, the self-efficacy theory, and work on expert tutors. As suggested by TTM, success typically depends on a person's readiness to change. However, often is the case that this readiness only applies to a small minority of people. As such, the stages of change outlined in TTM are an important consideration for any framework, as it treats behavioral change as a process over time, building and lasting and maintaining change, which is a crucial facet of the ecosystem design. To support this, self-efficacy theory purports that a person who has strong belief in their ability to perform specific behavior will be more likely to perform it and maintain that behavior until they reach some form of success. Indeed, a key facet of that theory is social learning that outlines people not only learn from information, but also from watching others and being supported emotionally by others. This social aspect interacts well with the INSPIRE acronym of expert tutors, which summarizes the approach that expert tutors use to engage individual learners. So if we move on and have a look at the actual behavioral change framework, which we can see in this diagram, it consists of several stages. Pre-contemplation. So this is if a participant is unaware of OrbEEt and they are not yet willing to engage via the platform. As you can see, certain facets of the ecosystem design attempt to target these specific stages in order to achieve transitions. So contemplation, which is when a user becomes aware of OrbEEt and they're willing to engage in the system but haven't used it yet. This is guided through the ecosystem into preparation, which is when the platform has been accessed, the game has been downloaded, and the people are ready to properly engage with OrbEEt itself. This then transitions into action, where they're actively using the OrbEEt tools and they are mindful of their consumption and optimizing their behavior. Once this positive behavioral change has been achieved, it moves on to maintenance, where the systems essentially try to maintain this behavior within the ideal process and the environment of OrbEEt itself. However, as is sometimes the case, this cannot be maintained, and this can lead to the relapse stage, which begins the process again, where a user becomes disengaged from the behaviors. So this is heavily based on the TTM model using the stage of change, and again, it looks at behavioral change as a process rather than just a specific trigger. So if we look at what this means for the design of the actual interfaces, so for pre-contemplation, if you're going to transition, the main purpose is to make OrbEEt aware. So if we look at the interface features that specifically target this, the in-office display promotes OrbEEt itself and its messages, and the internet portal provides the wiki to give information about OrbEEt and its platforms. For contemplation, the main transitions are applying usage guidelines, supporting and providing pre-social encouragement. For example, being aware of leaderboards, group performance, messages showcasing feedback to promote engagement of the systems, and again, supporting material within the portal itself, manuals, forums, and specific targeted metrics. Within preparation, rapid feedback and reward on positive actions is important, and looking at consistent office level performance feedback. So again, in-office display provides messages that target specific areas that are relevant to the user, whether that be lighting, heating, or the specific devices in their office. The context and the relevance of what is being presented is always crucial. The smartphone game similarly provides mechanics which reward group efficiency based on performance within consumption guidelines. So action, which continues the trend, which provides reward for maintained and changed behaviors, and rapid feedback given for positive actions that are taken by occupants. So for the smartphone game, again, this provides specific group performance and social aspects through leaderboard play and the specific modifiers given based on office level energy consumption performance. The Intranet portal itself provides other aspects such as a quiz to support the learning and self-efficacy, to maintain them into, to push them into positive behavioral change and maintain it from maintenance. So maintenance is specific. Once the behavior has been changed, it's an attempt to maintain that behavior by showing the benefits of maintaining the positive energy behaviors, and more importantly, to identify areas of poor performance, and when they're slipping, identify this and show it very crucially within the context. So again, in-office display provides messages showing the positive reinforcement for successful performance and highlighting areas where performance has not been so great. Leaderboards can showcase overall this and provide a social and competitive context, which has shown to be very effective in the literature itself. And again, the group performance in the smartphone game and the bonus energy mechanic provide this as well. And if they slip out of maintenance or relapse, it's very important to show a visualized decrease in the performance as they are not engaging with the system, and again to support them through messages within the in-office display to restart the overall process of behavioral change. So this brings us on to the actual gamified ecosystem itself. So the core systems consist of the behavioral change engine and the COR engine. The COR engine provides the energy KPIs at a high level of granularity, which is processed by the behavioral change engine to provide gamified metrics and baselines, but most importantly for comparison to check the specific performance of users within their context, whether this be looking at lighting at specific times of day, which is relevant to the users, whether it be looking at devices that are tied to certain business processes. Again, it's highly important to ensure that the energy KPIs being used and the feedback provided are within context and relevant to the user. So the front end is the ecosystem, which looks at an in-office display application, a web portal, and a smartphone game. Together, they provide many different avenues for facilitating the transitions between the stages, as shown in the previous diagram. It's possible for users not to want to participate in one certain interface. For example, the smartphone game might not be popular with certain occupants or users, and thus having other options to facilitate stage transition is important and one of the main positive benefits of the ecosystem itself. So again, we're in the process of validation, and this is primarily a research type project. And so the important thing is data collection from these systems as well. So not only are we looking at user statistics and analytics, we're logging specific triggers and the types of feedback that are being looked at. So for example, certain behavioral feedback for lights being shut off after a certain point in after working hours. We're monitoring specifically whether these triggers are being met, whether the goals are being achieved, and if that is changing over time. An important facet of the validation is to look at the types of feedback being applied and rank them to see what is most achievable and what achieved the best amount of positive behavioral change. So if we look at the communication process of the overall gamified ecosystem, the COR engine, as you can see there, provides the energy KPIs which are requested by the behavioral change engine. This processes the specific data into gamified KPIs, which are then communicated to the specific applications and interfaces. The interfaces themselves possess intercommunication. For example, the web portal uses login mechanic API for the game, communicates that to the game in order to calculate the bonus energy mechanic based on the user's performance and location. Similarly, the IoD application incorporates its messages and feedback into the portal itself, and vice versa. So the crux of the system is the behavioral feedback. As has been stated, one of the main purposes of OrbEEt is to look at the high granularity energy KPIs, the business processes, and see how that can be applied to the users to give relevant feedback. So the act of behavioral triggering is closely linked to the OBCF, as we have detailed, and utilizes the energy KPIs provided by the CR engine through the sensor infrastructures installed within the pilot sites. Behavioral trigger is essentially a form of gamified feedback based upon energy performance at various granularities. The purpose of a behavioral trigger is to support the essential transitions between the stages of change, which incorporate the elements of pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and finally relapse. A behavioral trigger is presented through the gamified ecosystem and typically takes the form of a message with a format first outlining current performance, then next the goal, and finally advice on how to achieve that goal. Depending on the performance, a trigger can either be a reinforcement type if consumption is below baseline, or an improvement type if the consumption is shown to be above baseline. In this manner, it targets multiple elements of the OBCF and gamification guidelines by not only providing rapid feedback and rewards, but also conveying new tasks and directing them in context to promote self-efficacy. So if we look here at this table, we have some examples of heat type triggers. So each trigger has various conditions and different granularities. So for example, the first trigger, HS1, is a site level trigger, and it looks at the heating as a whole in order to compare a previous day's heating usage to the baseline in order to check if users are above or below in terms of performance. So the second one, HR1, is a room level trigger, whereby heating is checked at room level depending upon certain comfort factors. So if a radiator is on and the comfort level is high above the norm, then the radiator can be turned down, potentially saving energy there. Or in some conditions, it might not even need to be used. And again, addressing this through messages and the behavioral feedback can lead to a change in behavior and the saving of this type of energy. So the next one, the third one down, is a device level trigger, which looks at heating left on overnight. So this is looking at specific radiators and checking between certain hours in order to determine whether radiators are being left on after hours, again to target specific behaviors and enact positive change. So and the final one down looks at an operation level trigger, which looks at specific heating during certain business processes, again checking comfort levels to see if heating is required during that sort of operation and business process, and providing messages and feedback there. So the primary interface for looking at the behavioral triggering is the in-office display. This is designed as a web application that can be accessed by tablets and other devices through a specific URL unique to each pilot site. This was developed using a fire and forget paradigm, so that, as to be expected of an in-office display, it can be left running indefinitely without actual interaction from the users. And it displays the tailored message and information that is calculated through the behavioral feedback system as we've just looked. The main purpose, as for validation, is the extensibility of the behavioral triggers, and specific time has been put into place so that these behavioral triggers are extensible. Some can be added, hot swapped, and refined with limited development time. Again, this is looking towards the validation and being able to rank the triggers and find out which are most appropriate, which can save the most energy, which is an important aspect of OrbEEt. And additionally, communication error detection is in place so that if certain communication systems do go down, the system will still maintain itself and work. So if we look at the in-office display, so this is the running in-office display for the Aspirina pilot site. As we can see here, this is a trigger for electrical devices. So electrical devices, so this is heating devices across the site. So this will be a site level heating trigger. As you can see at the top, that is the specific feedback. The trigger itself is in red to show that it's a improvement trigger and that the behaviors can be improved and that energy can be sorted. The yellow message below is the new goal, which is to essentially improve the heating efficiency, and the bottom was the advice that can be given to try and achieve said goal. And this is the type of format that is used for all of the messages. So a feedback, goal, and advice paradigm. So these are information triggers, where it is essentially to again facilitate the to improve awareness about OrbEEt. Again, linking back to stages, for example, pre-contemplation. So people will see this, they'll be interested in what this is within their office and what OrbEEt is, and it can lead to transition into contemplation and the other stages of change. So if we go back to the So that's the in-office display. So the web portal has been deployed for all pilot sites, again, with unique domains and URLs for access, and SSL security is in place to protect the specific personal data of users within the system. So the main purpose of the web portal is to act as an interactive further learning tool for participants with OrbEEt to incorporate aspects such as for social engagement, such as leaderboards, forum, wiki, quiz, and rewards can be given for specific decent performance from users, such as badges, achievements, and other things allowed by the system. And the information provided by the web portal can be communicated to the other systems, whether it be the login API for behavioral feedback, such as the bonus energy mechanic, which we'll look at in the game shortly. So if we look at the web portal, so this is the Aspirina web portal, and we can log in, and users are presented with this main screen. You'll notice on the right, there's notifications which can be pushed by admins of the system to highlight challenges or activities that will engage OrbEEt users. Forum activities, most recent, checked on the right. So one of the main areas is the user profile, which looks at the specific recent activity of the users within the system, provides points, certain times and dates, and achievements and badges can be earned, which are shown here. Users of the system are given points based upon how well they're engaging with your OrbEEt, among other aspects. So one of the main areas is the energy consumption statistics. Which takes a few moments to load. So the energy consumption statistics pull data from CO in order to display energy KPIs that are relevant to the users. So in this case, we're looking at the current operational rating there and the current composition. It shows the specific baselines and what the user's performance is. This is important for comparison and provides information for things such as business processes that are relevant to the user, the devices that are relevant to the user, and the rooms that are relevant to the user. In addition, further development is being conducted on the energy consumption statistics to provide further integration with the messages in order to provide targeted room level messages to users when they log in. So as we can see there, we look at the total consumption, the average consumption, and how much energy is being used. The specific graphics that appear are based upon performance and will display different. So the graph's interactive and can be viewed to see how much energy is being saved. So for example, if we look at the consumption history for the past 5 days for the Aspirina site, we can see that 4,700 kilowatt hours are being used there, and for electrical consumption, we can see that 5,900 kilowatt hours are being used there for heating consumption. And this is important to provide contextual information back to the users in order to see how they're performing and so on and so forth. So we look at the leaderboards. So we can see here the specific leaderboards. This ties into the game and activities that are present. So admins will be able to set challenges and specific competitions related around the energy KPIs, and then be able to push scores to leaderboards and reward users in that way. In addition, any completed game scores that are posted from the smartphone game can be pushed to this leaderboard, and again providing a sort of social aspect and a competition between users. The forum gives users the tool to be able to communicate with each other and gives them a line to the developers if they want to report anything in that respect. So, for example, we have some posts here from the Aspirana site. And mainly it's a tool for social engagement and to facilitate the other activities of OrbEEt. So in addition, OrbEEt has its own wiki, which can be populated with crucial information about the project and about the interfaces themselves. For example, at the moment, it serves as a home for the manuals and the user guides of the systems. For example, this is the portal manual showing all the different aspects of the portal, how it can be used, and is an important tool for new users of the system. Additionally, a trading tool is put in place, which can be completely controlled by the admin in order to add in specific questions relating to the specifics of the site itself. So these can be made more relevant and, again, are a useful tool to facilitate learning and aspects to allow for positive behavioral changes discussed. So this is the aspects of the portal, and every user has a profile with their own password and their own information, which can be set as they see fit. And that's the in-office display. So if we come back to the presentation, the final interface for the ecosystem is the smartphone game. A release version of this is currently playable on the Google Play Store and downloadable and supported by the majority of Android devices. The game itself is called OrbEEt Planet Escape and is a mobile game that looks at resource management in order to allow a group of crashed astronauts on a hostile world in order to gather resources, rebuild their ship, and basically escape the planet. Depending upon how this is done and how efficient the users are, each user is given a score, and again, this can be pushed to the leaderboard of the portal. In its design, the game incorporates specific aspects of serious games as present within the literature, and incorporates aspects of learning, again, to facilitate help towards the positive behavioral change. And if we look at the video for this. Okay, so there's a language system in place for all the major sites, German, Bulgarian, and Spanish. Users log in using their portal credentials, which allows for the energy bonus to be gained. So again, this is based on office level performance, so room level, based upon the user's current and historical data, and is calculated in order to provide incentive to engage with OrbEEt. So as we can see from the interface, the top left shows the resources currently available: energy, food, and oxygen, from left to right. The game is timed, so the quicker you can escape the planet, the better, which is why we have a timer in the middle. And on the right, you can see the amount of bonus energy provided by the mechanic, which in this case is none because it was just a 1 times multiplier. So the main goal of the planet is to gather resources. You can see when the game starts, you will be able to mine resources from the nodes that are available. You have a team of astronauts. You start with just the one, however, and have to revive the others. Each astronaut has a specific profile and is good at certain areas. So, for example, this astronaut was good at could be good at mining, so he's good at taking the stuff. So many games are present in order to further gain resources. So you can help the astronauts out by performing simple mini games such as this, which provides food. And astronauts can be set to the specific tasks of gathering, building, and repairing. So structures, these are the structures. They produce specific resources. So this, for example, produces oxygen. Again, that's in a mini game that can be enacted by the player of the game in order to gain extra resources. This structure gains energy, solar energy. Again, another mini game that can be performed by the user if they manage their astronaut team well in order to gain more resources to escape the planet quicker. So this is the home base. As you can see, there are multiple astronauts in the crew, each with their own specific specializations, whether it be chemistry, mining, that kind of stuff. And by managing the team to do the tasks that are most relevant to them and reviving certain astronauts and just generally good resource management, you'll be able to complete the game quicker and escape quicker. So again, astronauts can be moved across screen and set to specific tasks, whether that be gathering resources, repairing, and so on. So another aspect of the game is to build certain structures. So the initial resources won't last long, so it's important that users invest in specific structures in order to, again, facilitate the gaining of resources and so on. So for example, there, a specific device has been created by this astronaut and is being worked. So the building of each new structure will cost resources. The repairing of structures will cost certain resources. And each astronaut has a specific status as well. So for example, as you can see there, that astronaut was low on oxygen. At that point, they have to return to the main base and use the resources they've collected in order to refresh their statuses. If this is not done within time, the astronaut can become unconscious and then has to be revived again. Structures can be upgraded, as you can see there, at the cost of resources. This makes them more efficient and produce more resources and is key to completing the game in a decent manner. So the main goal is to power, repair, and repair the ship. So this requires all three types of resources. So you need oxygen, you need the food for the journey, and you need obviously the power. And as time goes on, you will collect these things and repair it as time goes on to complete the game itself. In addition, all astronauts need to be revived before the planet can be escaped. So as you can see, as time goes on and more efficient structures are built, more and more resources will be gained. And once you get to that specific point where you have enough food, the spaceship's repaired, and you have the energy, you can blast off, leave the planet, and complete the game. You will be graded on your performance, given a score based on how efficient you are, how quickly the thing has been completed. So that brings us back to the presentation. So that's the entirety of the gamified ecosystem, again, facilitated through the foundation of the OBCF to promote positive behavioral change. So again, the ecosystem itself consists of the in-office display, the internet portal, and smartphone game, and it targets the specific stages of change as outlined in the OBCF and facilitates the transitions between them in order to positively change behavior and identify areas in organizations where energy can be saved through the occupants. The behavioral feedback system is innovative, using the high granularity data and the business processes to provide meaningful and contextual information to the occupants based on their performance. And as stated, there's ongoing refinement of the portal, the game, and the in-office display. New features and stuff are being added over time based upon the feedback provided by pilot site users. And that concludes my presentation today on the gamified ecosystem. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Stuart. That was very good. I will take back the screen just to conclude with today's webinar. Looking at the time, I think we are out of time for any direct questions that you can pose to Stuart, but I would ask you to consider our contact information that I show you on the slide here now. Please feel free to email us any questions that you have based on the presentation you just heard. for everybody who couldn't join today, just make sure everything will end up at YouTube at some point, and you will then be able to review what you have just learned and what was the condensed information that Stuart provided. Thank you very much for listening, and have a nice day.